Hello, Professor. This is the lab demo for Lab 10. So for the LEDs, LED 0 and LED 2 will be sort of the empty flags for the FIFO buffers for the two RGB LEDs. And also LED 1 and LED 3 will indicate the same for the output flag for it being full. First 4 switches will be blue, then the second 4 set will be green, third set of 4 will be red, and then the last 4 are dedicated to the clock manager to control the reading clock. And so first let's, and also here this light 15 will indicate which RGB LED will be reading and writing from. So currently we are, so if I hit this button here, we could switch between the two RGB LEDs. So if it's off, we will be writing to the rightmost RGB LED, and if LED 15 is on, we'll be writing and reading to the buffer connected to this RGB LED. And so let's say we want to write to the FIFO buffer to the rightmost LED. So we'll have this will be in the 0th state, so this LED will be off. If we want to get the color magenta or purple, we have one part of blue and also one part of red here. And then now all we got to do is I'm going to hit this button here to sort of write to the FIFO buffer, and as I write, since the write is at 100 megahertz frequency, then we expect to sort of fill the buffer almost instantaneously after we push that button. And you'll sort of see LED 1, which is the full flag, to be turned on after I write to the buffer. And now we are completely filling the buffer here with this LED indicator. Now let's read from the buffer, which is I'm going to do by pressing this button here. And then now we have sort of a bluish color, or a magenta color here. And probably put another layer. It's kind of bright still. Just leave, I think that's fine. Okay, and so let's say we want to sort of change this to a, let's turn it off. So actually let's do green. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so notice how when I read from the FIFO that it sort of immediately went to empty. And the reason why is because our sort of read clock here is we don't have any of the switches up. So we're also reading at a very fast frequency. So one press of the button will do that and empty the 16 sort of data slots in the FIFO buffer that we have. So what we want to do is we want to write to the same RGB LED. Let's write, or let's do the second RGB LED. So I'm going to hit this toggle switch, and then now from here we know that we are going to be associated with the colors and the buffer for the leftmost RGB LED. So we will be sort of writing to a different buffer this time. So here we have sort of that buffer. The FIFO is empty by this 2 here being on. And then let's write to it. So now our FIFO is full. Now let's sort of hit our read. So when I hit this read button, then we should expect a green color come up. And we sort of see that there. You sort of see the greenish a little bit, kind of blending into the colors. It's kind of pretty. Okay, so the read and write flags, or sorry, the full and empty flags of the FIFO buffer seem to be working good. Now let's try and control the frequency of the read. So let's say we want to slow down the clock a little bit. So let's put this switch here, switch there, and this switch here. So we have these 3 switches slowing down our reading clock. So let's say we want to turn off the first RGB LED. So first we're gonna go back to the first RGB LED. Now LED 15 is off. So, and then let's sort of prepare the data that we are going to write to the FIFO. If we want to turn it off, all our switches are set to low, or we would have no duty cycle. Okay. So now let's write to the FIFO buffer. Notice now we are full. Now let's sort of read. Now in this case, since our clock is going to be a little bit slower, we're going to have to sort of read from the buffer a lot. We're going to have to press this button a lot more times to actually empty out this FIFO buffer. And oh, it sort of did it sort of instantaneously, well, it sort of inputted the data, we read from the FIFO, and now we sort of outputted that to the RGB LED. But notice how neither the full or empty flags are indicated, which means we still have some data in the FIFO buffer. And one click of the button at this slow frequency wasn't enough to sort of empty our FIFO buffer. So all we got to do is just keep reading from our FIFO buffer, and eventually we will see a empty flag here. So our now FIFO buffer is now empty, and that sort of demonstrates sort of the control of the clock manager controlling the reading frequency. And that sort of concludes our, lastly, you sort of saw these digits here. These just sort of indicate the 4-bit duty cycle of the red, blue, and green colors for each RGB LED. And that pretty much sums up Lab 10. Thank you.